If you want to move your employees from 60% productive to 80% plus, get them on the right seats.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
And welcome back to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris, hanging out in the podcast chair. Thank you for joining me today for another podcast from the Appraiser Coach. We're going to talk today about productivity. And specifically, we're going to be talking about the productivity of your employees. I'm going to use some real numbers here. You're welcome to look them up on your own. I'm not going to cite any individual study, but they are out there. Google them, as they say. I want to pause here and remind you that we are sponsored by 3 great companies. One of them, of course, is Alamode. Alamode is the software that I've been using for over 20 years. They've been in business over 30 years, 3 decades, helping appraisers to do more. They have the best tools out there, folks, and they are the best value. Check them out. Go to alamode.com or 800-ALAMODE. DataMaster, saving time, saving money, saving about 40 minutes on every stinking report that you do. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Again, it's datamasterusa.com. Finally, we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine. Folks, I love it when I get an email from Working RE. I know there's always going to be good information in there about what's going on in the appraisal industry. You should subscribe, and it's free, Free. Check them out. Go to workingre.com. That's working, RE as in workingrealestate.com. All right, folks, I'm going to talk about productivity. I'm going to be very blunt today. I think this might come as a surprise to many of you. And it was a surprise to me. When I first started hiring and dealing with people, I was honestly a bit frustrated. I was frustrated because when you pay somebody to do a job, you think that they should do the job, right? And especially when you're paying somebody by the hour. It's one thing if you're on commission or salary and there's a certain level of productivity that has to be done. And in those situations, you often don't care whether it's done at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. If somebody wants to work through their night and get things done, hey, it gets done. It's not a problem. If they want to work a little here, take a little break, do some dishes, come back and finish their work, that's not a problem. As long as you're meeting due dates and as long as the expectations, the bar, if you will, is being met, then normally that's not an issue. But what about when you pay somebody by the hour, which, let's be honest, most of us do. I have currently 20 employees, and 4 of them are either on salary or commission. That means 16 of the 20, a huge majority, are being paid by the hour. Now, when I pay somebody $15 an hour to do something, I would expect that they would work the entire hour. I would expect that I would get my money's worth, as they say. Now, I understand that some hours are going to be more productive than others. I do understand the Pareto principle. I do understand the Parkinson's principle. We've talked about both of them here on this podcast. But in the end, I don't want to get ripped off, right? You wouldn't go to a restaurant and eat $25 worth of food and pay $15 for it. Unless there was a sale, of course. You wouldn't dine and dash, as they say. You wouldn't go to a grocery store and fill up your cart with $300 worth of groceries and pay $250 and walk out and feel good about yourself. Likewise, in my opinion, and again, this is just me, one guy speaking on a microphone, in my opinion, you would not put in an hour's worth of work, charge whatever hourly rate that you have going, whether it's $15 an hour, $20 an hour, or $3 an hour, and expect that you don't need to put in that hour's worth of work. And I'm not talking about sitting in front of a computer for an hour. I'm talking about actually being productive, that you're not being distracted, that you're not on Facebook or TikTok or whatever your fancy is, that your focus is on the work at hand. I believe in good old-fashioned principles, and good old-fashioned principles say a day's pay for a day's work, meaning if you work 8 hours, that you literally work that 8 hours. Now, I'm not under the impression that it's going to be 100% productive all the time. Of course not. Of course, you're going to be more productive some hours than others. Of course, you're going to take breaks. Of course, there's going to be things that come up. Of course, there's distractions. We've talked here on this podcast about the refocus time, as we titled it, the time that it takes to refocus after an interruption. You might be working away on an appraisal report and the phone rings, right? Do you let that phone go? Even if you do, the ringing of the phone itself will be at least a temporary distraction to you. There are studies galore out there that indicate that when you get distracted, when you're knee deep in something, meaning you're right in the analysis side, you're choosing the comps, you're making the adjustments, you're reconciling the report, and your head is in the game, and that little ding goes off on your computer saying, you've got mail, or your phone rings and you feel like you need to answer it. What happens to that focus? Well, there are social studies galore that say that it takes an average of 7 minutes, folks. I know it sounds crazy, not 7 seconds, 7 minutes to refocus after a distraction. So you may be busily working on a job and the phone rings and you take that phone call. It will take you, and I know you don't believe this. No, Dustin, I can do it faster, right? I can refocus. No, I'm talking about knee deep. I'm talking about your brain power is focused on that particular thing. It will take you a full 7 minutes to get back into that same zone. Not that you can't start working before that, but to get to the level of depth that you were before the phone call takes you a full 7 minutes. Now, I get that, and that's not what the topic is today. We've talked about that in the past and how to avoid it and time blocking and everything else, right? We've talked about that. But what I am talking about today is productivity, and specifically the productivity of your employees, and even more specifically, the productivity of your hourly employees. How do we get the productivity of our hourly employees up? By the way, I recently read some studies showing the productivity of working from home, and it is a podcast that I have recorded. I don't know when it will come out in reference to this one, whether it's before or after, but look for that, the productivity of working from home. It's amazing how much more productivity you can get from an employee working from home than in an office. I know, it's counterintuitive. It seems opposite of what it should be, but that's what the studies show. And when you really dig into it and understand why, the distractions at work, the commuting time, the various things that can happen at work that won't happen when you're at home, it does start to make a little bit more sense. But what is always frustrating to individuals starting out on this law of delegation path, meaning they finally listen to the coach and say, okay, Dustin, I get it. Law of delegation, that's going to help me to do more. The only way I can create more time is to, shuffle off some of the things that I'm used to doing to someone else. And once you do that, you get hooked, folks. Trust me. Delegation is an addiction. It is. Because once you learn that you can do something so much more on a higher level, and not just on a higher level of thinking, but on a higher level of pay. Let's just state it the way it is. You make more money when you pay somebody by the hour to do things that distract you from what you need to be doing. I first learned this principle years ago when it came to house cleaning. I used to spend about 2 to 3 hours every Saturday morning cleaning my house, right? Scrubbing toilets, mopping floors, dusting the fans, those kind of things. And when I realized that I could pay somebody, let's say $100 to clean my home, but I could make $300 in that same amount of time that I would have spent. They do it much faster than I do. But when I realized that I could pay somebody less money per hour than what I was making, that changed everything for me. And that allowed me to be able to say, maybe this law of delegation thing is okay. By the way, I shared with you the house cleaning thing. What happened before that was my accounting. When I used to do my taxes every year, holy smokes. When I learned that I could hire an accountant to do my taxes and that they would save me more time and more money because they know what they're doing, all of a sudden the law of delegation works. But when you start to get hooked on this law of delegation, one of the concerns is that you're paying somebody, let's call it $15 an hour, and you feel like you're not getting $15 an hour work. Now, in the beginning, I must say this. In the beginning, you have to realize that training takes time, right? That's the most expensive part of the whole law of delegation process, is trying to train somebody to do what they need to do. And in order to do that, you've got to slow down. And in order to do that, it might take them twice as much time to do what you need them to do as it will in the long run. That means if you're paying somebody $15 an hour to do something, they're really being paid $30 an hour, right? Do the math. If it takes them twice as long to do something, you're going to pay them twice as much. And that's a concern. And it's a big enough concern that it keeps a lot of people stalemate. It keeps a lot of people from doing what they need to do and what they want to do because they know the law of delegation can work. But in order to get from here to there, they know that there are going to be some productivity lapses. And folks, this is just part of doing business. I want to pause here and remind you of another part of doing business, and that is your software. What are you using to do your report writing? I'm using Alamode. Folks, I've looked at everyone out there. And by the way, they're great software. I have nothing bad to say about any other software out there. They all have their place. For me and the productivity that I get out of my life and out of my business, Alamode's where it's at. Alamode, you can find out more by going to their website at alamode.com, or you can, of course, pick up the phone and call them. It's 800-ALAMODE, ALAMODE. Speaking of saving time, speaking of delegating, how about delegating to your software? How about delegating to technology? That's what DataMaster USA allows you to do. Folks, you're talking 40 minutes per report, 40. I don't know about you, folks, but saving 40 minutes per report is well worth whatever cost is involved. Well, up to a point, but trust me, it's worth it. The value's there. DataMasterUSA.com. Again, it's DATA, Master, USA is in United States of America.com. Finally, we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine. Working RE, folks, was established as, well, Working Real Estate Magazine. It has a little bit in there about home inspectors, but mostly that magazine is focused on you and I, and that is valuation specialists or appraisers. If you want to know what's going on in the appraisal world, that's where you need to be. Check them out. Go to workingre.com. Again, it's workingre.com. All right, welcome back to the program. Dustin Harris hanging out with you and talking a little bit about productivity. And specifically, I want to talk today about how to improve productivity. By the way, I did a bunch of research prior to coming on the air. I did not write down anything. I'm not going to send you to, because you can do the same stuff. If you're interested in checking my facts, go to Google and type in productivity studies for employees, and you'll find a lot of information out there. And there's different studies that show different things. But folks, when you average them all together, the studies that I look through, you can plan on your employee. And these are good employees. This is high-end stuff. You can plan on your good employees being about 60% effective or productive. Folks, I mean, think about this for just a second, right? That means on an 8-hour day. So that means 8 hours that they are working. They're really productive about 5 of those hours, all right? I know that's depressing. I know it's depressing. Now, you have to do the studies in your own economic studies to decide if that's worth it. But folks, I want to share with you a principle that I learned years ago that I have found when I apply these principles. Okay? Meaning when I actually pay attention to what works, and I do it, that I find are the difference between 60% productive and I would say closer to 80% productive. By the way, I've got a few employees out there that I guarantee are 95+% effective, right? Productive. Meaning they might need to blow their nose once in a while, but for the most part, they are focused and they are laser focused. And they're both, by the way, managers in my office. One of them is a virtual assistant manager, and one of them is my office manager. And these folks are very, very productive. Now, that's not to say that others in my office are not productive. And I guarantee that my commission-based people are definitely productive as well, but it's on their time, right? They're fine with doing half a report, taking their kid to soccer game, and then coming back and finishing the report. And I don't have any problem with that either, right? But those that are supposed to be here from 8 to 5, I want them to be as productive as possible. And the studies tell me that they're going to be, without any touches from me, right? Other than the training and the expectation side of things, they're going to be about 60% productive. That's depressing. 60%. Think about that for a second, right? If you're paying somebody like $15 an hour, that means you're really paying them 20 plus. Think about it. If they're productive 60% of the time, you're really paying somebody, instead of $15 an hour, more like $21, $22 an hour. That's depressing. But here's the thing. Years ago, I read a great book, and if you've not read the book, I highly recommend that you read the book. It is a classic when it comes to business books, right? There's a few out there. One of them is Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's a book that I've read not once, but at least twice and maybe 3 times. Maybe 2.5 times. Maybe I got bored the third time around. I don't know. But the bottom line is, this is a great book. And the reason it's great is because it's not just somebody's opinion. It is a very detailed study of thousands of companies and what made them great. What's the difference between, a mom and pop store that closes up in 5 years and another store that might go on to be a Fortune 500, right? What's the difference? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has that kind of ambition, right? And that plays into it as well. But if your ambition is to be super successful and you don't make it, what's the difference between you and somebody else? And that's what this book is all about. And it goes into some great detail about what these companies were doing, these great companies were doing that made them great where they were simply good before. And one of the things that Jim Collins talks about in that book is what I call the bus analogy. And the bus analogy is simply this: your business is the bus. And the people in and on the bus are you and your employees. And Jim says it like this, and I'm pretty much quoting word for word. He says, you got to get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats on the bus. Let's break that down. Number 1, you've got to hire the right people. Find good talent and hire them. Get them on the bus. Find people that are on the bus that are not good talent and get them off the bus. Fire them. Get rid of them. You don't need them. They're dragging you down, right? They're costing you $21 an hour and you're only paying them $15. Get them off the bus. But then the important part of that recipe is that those that you decide to keep on the bus, number 1, they're the right people. You've already made that decision. But number 2, what do you do with them? And Jim talks about getting them in the right seats on the bus. What does that mean? Well, it means that you find places for them where they have talent, experience, and here we go, passion for what they do. Let me give you an example. Years ago, I hired somebody as a customer service rep. She was very good in her interview. I did a couple of what I call Bob calls, and that means I call and pretend to be Bob, and she does the best she can on the phone, and I kind of just, find out how well she does. She did great. I put her in a customer service role, and she struggled. She did not enjoy it. It was very obvious that she wasn't very good at it. She did well for her interview, and she just was not doing well in her life, if you will, as a customer service rep. I had a discussion with her. I expressed my concerns. She expressed her concerns. Dustin, I don't like being on the phones. What? But you're so good at it. Yeah, I can fake it, but I hate it. I really hate it. I would much rather do research and data entry. Really? Okay, let's try that. All of a sudden, folks, she went from a mediocre employee to an outstanding employee. I had her in the wrong seat. You get people in the right seats on the bus, and all of a sudden things happen. So my thought today, if you want to move your employees from 60% productive to 80% plus, get them on the right seats. How do you do that? Talk to them. Sit down with them. Get past the mask. Get past the I want to impress my boss, and move on to this is how I really feel. If you can get to that point in the conversation, you'll find out a great deal. If you're willing to make a move in that, you'll find that the productivity will increase. If you want to stop paying your $15 an hour people $21 an hour to work, you might want to get them on the right seats on the bus. Folks, we talk about this kind of thing and others in what we call the monthly meeting with a coach. Monthly meeting with a coach is, for lack of a better term, a webinar. It's live. It's interactive. As you can imagine, with the title Monthly Meeting with a Coach, it's every month. And we have an opportunity to interact with one another and do some micro-mentoring, meaning if you have some issues and some problems and some concerns and some questions that you want help with, we do that live in the meeting, and it's at no extra cost. It's all part of being the all-star team. You need to be a member. Check them out. It's $49 a month, folks. It is a steal. Trust me, a steal from all the benefits that you get. Check it out. Go to theappraisercoach.com/memberships.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.